Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Please drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below before we get started with the video. And so today we're going to be looking at Donald Trump basically polling against Joe Biden in these polls from 538 and basically apply a polling error from 2020 and see what that result would end up looking like. And so we could see that there are certain states that did vote for Donald Trump by quite a couple of points, and since the national average is favoring him quite significantly, we are going to be marking down certain states as safe Republican and safe Democrat. Those states being Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, Nebraska's 3rd Congressional District, the 1st District, as well as Nebraska at large. We got Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and Missouri, all being safe Republican, with Maine's 2nd Congressional District, South Carolina, and Alaska as of right now. And we have for the safe Democrat states, California, Vermont, Massachusetts, Maryland, DC, and Maine's 1st Congressional District. Those are the only safe Democratic electoral votes I could award him. Hawaii doesn't even fall in that category because there is a pretty surprising result when you look at the latest poll and apply a polling error. And we'll get to that in a second. We're going to be going from east to west, basically doing every state that way. We could also do it, through actually poll closing. So what we'll actually do is we'll actually do Ohio and Virginia first, then go to the Northeast, and we'll continue from there. So essentially, Ohio is the first state we're going to be looking at as of right now. We'll be seeing that Donald Trump is actually up in the state by 11 points in the latest poll. And if we look at the aggregate in 2020, he was only up by 0.8 percentage points. He ended up winning it by 8 points. So that's a 7.2 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. And so if we look at the latest poll and apply that here, we'd actually see Donald Trump would be winning the state just below 18 percentage points as of right now, which would give him a massive win in the electoral college. If we go to the next state, which would be the state of Virginia, we will see that Donald Trump is within reach here. He is polling, 2 points ahead of Biden as of right now. According to the latest poll, he is only ahead by 2 percentage points in a new poll. And if we look at 2020, the aggregate did actually overestimate him by around 1.7 percentage points. And so if you were to apply that to this, we'd actually see Donald Trump barely losing the state of Virginia. He'd actually only be losing it by around a tilt margin, according to this poll, with that polling error from 2020. If we look at Connecticut, we're going to be seeing that that state is surprisingly competitive. We see the latest poll does have Biden up. If we can let this load, we know he is ahead by 9. If we look at 2020, he was ahead by 26.3 percentage points. He only ended up winning by 20, so that's a 6.3 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. And so if we look at this poll and apply that here, we can actually see that Connecticut would be below a likely margin. It would actually be only around a 3-point victory for him in this scenario. And if we look at a state like New Jersey, this is the really interesting one. He's up by 5 in the latest poll with third-party voters, or third-party candidates included. And in 2020, he was up by 20.4. He ended up winning it by 15.9 points. So that is a basically 4.5 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. So if you were to apply that here, Biden would actually only be up in New Jersey by around a tilt margin as of right now. And if we look at a state like Delaware, we're actually going to see Delaware be a pretty interesting result. He theoretically, there is no new polling, but Biden's at 46% here, Trump's at 36, so that puts the state at around a 10-point win. The polling error in Delaware, looking at it, would be around, a 4.3 percentage point polling error as of right. Actually, it's more than that. It's like it's actually a 5.3 percentage point polling error when you look at the margin. Biden won it by 19. The polling aggregate had him ahead by 24.3. And so if you were to apply that to that plus 10 poll, he'd be right below the 5-point margin. It would be around a 4.7 percentage point victory for Biden as of right now. And if we look at Rhode Island, we'll see that Biden in this state, 30.6 percentage point lead in 2020. He only ended up winning it by 20.8. So that's around a 9.8 percentage point polling miss in favor of Biden. The latest poll has him ahead by 19 with third party voters. And so that basically puts him ahead with Rhode Island above 10 points as of right now. And now looking at the states of North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, which actually go before North Carolina or before New York, excuse me. If we go ahead and look at North Carolina first, we'll see that Donald Trump in the latest poll is actually going to be ahead by a couple points. He's ahead by 3 points, but the aggregate has him ahead by 6.3%. If we see the polling error from 2020, it was around a 3.5 percentage point polling error for him. So if we were to actually apply that error, we'd see that Biden would actually be losing the state of North Carolina by around 9 percentage points, which would be a historic defeat for an incumbent president there. We see that Obama even won it in 2008, so it would be a pretty big deal to see the state go that way. The last time North Carolina voted likely Republican was for Bush in 2004 when the suburbs were a little bit more Republican. So that would be a humongous victory, even for a candidate like Donald Trump. If we look at Georgia, we're going to see that Trump is ahead by 5.5 percentage points. And we see here Biden was overestimated by about a point. You see a 1.2 percentage point polling lead. And in Georgia, he only won by 0.24. So if you were to apply that polling error here, Donald Trump would actually be up in the state by around 6.5 percentage points as of right now. We can see here that Donald Trump is ahead by 10.9 percentage points. The latest poll does have him ahead by 13. If we look at the aggregate, we will see in 2020, he was ahead by 2.5, Biden was, and Trump ended up winning by 3.4. That's a 4.9 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. So if you were to apply that here, Donald Trump would actually be above in the state by around 15, 16 points or so as of right now. If we were to look at a state like Pennsylvania, we're going to be seeing huge shifts for Donald Trump as of right now. In Pennsylvania, the aggregate, if this would load, has him ahead by around 2 points as of right now. In 2020, the polling error in favor of Biden was around, 2 point. It looks like a 2.5 percentage point. Actually, it would be around a 3.5 percentage point polling error as of right now. And so if you were to apply that to the current aggregate, Trump would actually be up in the state a little bit above 5 as of right now. And looking at New York, you do see a very interesting result. In New York, what's very interesting is that the latest poll does have Biden ahead by 9 points, but in 2020, the aggregate had him ahead by 29.4 percentage points. And if we look over here, we can see he only won by 23.1, which is around a 6.3 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. So if you were to apply that to the latest 9+ poll in New York for Biden, that actually put the state in the lean category, which would be a really close margin for a state like New York. New York has not gone Republican in a really long time, basically since 1984. It hasn't even gone Republican in 88 when Dukakis actually won it by 4 points as of right now. And so that would mark a historic, narrowing of the state since then, and Donald Trump would be basically the best Republican performance there since 1988. If we look at New Hampshire, we're going to see there that in the latest poll, Biden's ahead 3 points with third-party voters. And if we look over here, we'll see that Biden was ahead by 11.1% in the polling. And if we go over here, we can see that he won by 7.4. That's around a 3.7 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. And so if you were to apply that to this poll, you would actually see a tilt margin of victory for the former president as of right now in the state of New Hampshire, which would be historic. The state has not gone Republican ever since, I believe, 2000, when Bush won it by around 1.3 percentage points. And so that would be a historic margin of victory for a Republican. It would be those 4 electoral votes extra for Donald Trump to get to 270. And we can see he's already narrowing in to 270 with just Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, and a couple other states as of right now. The next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Michigan. We're going to see that Michigan, Donald Trump in the aggregate is ahead quite significantly, compared to previous cycles. He's ahead by around 0.7% in 2020. Biden was ahead by 7.9, and Biden ended up winning by 2.8. That's around a 5.1 percentage point polling error. And so if you were to apply that to this aggregate, Biden would actually barely be ahead by 5 points as of right now. Similar margin to Pennsylvania. Now, Wisconsin is a huge margin of error here. We can see that 1.4 percentage point lead for Trump in Wisconsin. In 2020, the polls were off here by around 7.8 percentage points. And so if you were to apply that there, you see Biden's ahead by 8.4. He ended up winning by around, 0.6 essentially. We can see that that is around a 7.8 percentage point polling error. If you apply that to that lead there, Trump would basically be winning Wisconsin by 9. So it would be a huge margin of victory for Donald Trump in Wisconsin as of right now. If we look at Maine at large, what's actually quite interesting about Maine is that if you actually go to the latest poll there, you actually technically have a very big victory for Trump in the latest poll. He's actually up by 6 points there in the latest polling. From 2020, the aggregate had him up by 13 points. He ended up winning by 9.1. So if you basically add like 3.9% to this poll, Trump would actually be winning Maine at large by almost around 10. And that would actually drop, Maine's first by, down below 15 points essentially. Maine's at large would almost be a 10-point victory. It'd be a larger victory than the Rust Belt states, larger than North Carolina and Georgia, which would be really interesting to see. I guess if you had Kennedy getting like a ridiculous amount of the vote there, you would see Donald Trump perform significantly well here. So that is a very interesting result. In Illinois, we're going to see that Donald Trump is in fact, polling better here, but Biden is still ahead by 10. The aggregate did underestimate Biden by around a point here for some reason. So Biden was ahead by 16. He ended up winning by 17. So that puts the state at an 11-point victory for Donald Trump as of right now, or excuse me, for Joe Biden. If we look at Texas, we're actually going to see that Donald Trump in the aggregate was only up by 1.1%. He ended up winning by 5.6, so that's a 5.5 polling miss in favor of Biden. And so if we see the current aggregate, Trump is up by 10.8%. So if you were to apply that, Texas would be a safe state on the map, right above 15 points as of right now. If we go to Iowa, we'll see that the race is not even close. The latest poll has Trump up there by 15 percentage points as of right now. And in 2020, he led the aggregate by 1.3% on election day. He ended up winning by 8.2, so around a 7.9 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. And so if you were to apply that, Trump would easily be winning the state by around 22, 23 points as of right now. If we look at Nebraska's second congressional district, you're going to see that he's polling ahead by there by 3. The polling aggregate had Biden winning by 3.8. He ended up winning by 6.6, so that's around a 2.8 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden, or in favor of Trump in this case. And so when you look at that, what's actually quite funny is that now you can see in Nebraska's second, actually the latest poll just dropped in this recording. Biden's ahead by 5 percentage points according to this, and this is actually a leaning Republican pollster from the district. And so that actually does put Nebraska second in the likely Democratic column. They literally just dropped the poll right when we were recording this video, so that would actually put Nebraska second at around an 8-point victory, which is really weird, seeing Nebraska second being a bigger victory than New York, Connecticut, Delaware, and New Jersey. That would be really a very, very interesting result. If we look at Colorado, we are going to see a pretty big victory for Biden. He's ahead here by 10 points, and the polling aggregate here underestimated him by a point. He was ahead by 12.5 before election day, and he ended up winning by 13.5, so that'd be an around 11-point victory. Very similar, Colorado, Illinois voting very similar to each other as of right now. If we look at Minnesota, we'll actually see that Donald Trump is within striking distance there. And this is actually going to be really close. We could see Biden was ahead by 9.2 on a before election day, and he ended up winning by 7.1. So that's a 2.1 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. And right now, the latest poll has Biden ahead by 2 percentage points. And so if you were to go ahead and apply that margin, you'd actually see Donald Trump barely pick off the state of Minnesota. He'd only win it by 0.1 percentage points. So it'd be very close, but he would narrowly pick off the state in this hypothetical scenario. And so New Mexico, If we were to go to that one, that's another interesting one because the latest poll from August, which is very old, has him ahead by 8 points. However, with Robert F. Kennedy, we could see Biden's at 41 and Trump's at 36. And since this poll is already almost a year old, I'm actually going to just go ahead and use the Kennedy crosstab, since these would probably end up being more accurate than this really old poll. And so Biden's ahead by 41 to Trump's 36. That's +5. The aggregate favored Biden in the state by a little bit less than a point, essentially 0.9%. And so if you were to go ahead and apply that polling error, Biden would be ahead in the state by around 4.1 percentage points as of right now. And if we look at Hawaii, you're going to see something very interesting there. The latest poll has Biden up 8 points with third-party candidates included. The aggregate had him winning by around 34.3 percentage points. And the latest, result from there was 29.5. So that's literally around a 5 point polling miss. And so if you were to apply that to that poll, Biden would actually only be up in Hawaii by around 3 points, which would be a very, very historic defeat. Not a defeat, but it would be a defeat for the Democrats in Hawaii, because it would go from being D plus 30 to only D plus 3, essentially. The margin would be literally divided by 10 in this scenario. The next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Washington. Now, the latest poll before did had, Biden only up by 8 and Trump was up 5 in this one poll with only a very low sample size. But this latest poll has a larger sample size and it's Democratic leaning, so it may be inflating his margin here. But Biden is ahead by 16, and this doesn't include third-party candidates. And so basically, if you were to apply the polling error from here, which was around 5 points, you see 23-point lead here, and then around here you see basically in Washington and he won by 19.2, so that's around essentially a 4 point polling error, something like that. And so if you were to apply that, Biden would be ahead by around 12 in Washington, and then in Oregon you'd see something really similar. He'd be ahead by 11 here. In 2020 you see 21-point lead here, and then over here you see that Biden won by 16, so it's around a 5 point miss. And so 11 minus 5, that'd be a 6 point victory in Oregon as of right now. And we only have 2 more states to fill in, Arizona and Nevada. We'll see that in Arizona, Donald Trump is actually ahead here by 4.5. The polling aggregate underestimated him by 2.3. We see 2.6 percentage point victory in the polling here as of right now in 2020. And the victory here was 0.3. So if you were to apply that to the aggregate, Trump would be ahead by around 6 points in the state of Arizona. And if we look at Nevada, which is the final state, we will see Trump's polling lead here is pretty large. However, looking at 2020, Biden was ahead by 5.3. He ended up winning by 2.4. So that's a 2.9 percentage point polling error in favor of Biden. And we see he's up 5.8. So if you were to apply the polling error, Trump would almost be winning Nevada by around 8 points in this scenario, just a little bit below Wisconsin as of right now. And so for this final map, we have Donald Trump winning 328 electoral college votes to Joe Biden's 210. And what's actually pretty interesting about this is that this kind of aligns with my election model pretty closely. Now, the margins are different, but the state characterizations are almost the same. The only difference is that Maine at large is still Democrat as of right now, and Nebraska's second is actually Republican by way more than this. It's actually ahead by 4.5. Maine at large is still lean Democrat, but other than that, all the other state characterizations are basically the same, disregarding the margin. So if you were to get the 2020 polling error and apply it to all of the aggregates, we see a result that's very similar to my election forecast as of right now. And so if you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter and join the Discord server in the description down below. And I will see you guys very, very soon.